The emergency signal cut through the darkness of space like a scream for help. It bounced from star to star, reaching every corner of the galaxy where civilized beings might hear it. The message was simple but terrifying: an entire world was about to die. On Kepler 442b, a planet covered in crystal cities and floating gardens, the Zelethi people ran through streets filled with smoke and fire. These were peaceful beings who had never known war. They built art instead of weapons, created music instead of missiles. Their 6 arms were meant for crafting beautiful things, not fighting. Now those same arms carried their crying children as buildings collapsed around them. Above their world, massive black ships hung like vultures. The Korthak Dominion had come to take everything. These alien warriors lived for conquest, traveling from world to world to steal and destroy. They had done this 1,000 times before. The Zelethi would be just another dead civilization to add to their collection. "Please, anyone out there," the Zelethi leader spoke into their communication device with shaking hands. "We are dying. Our cities burn. Our people fall. The Korthak have broken through every defense we had. They said they would leave nothing alive. Not even our children will see tomorrow's sunrise. We have maybe 6 hours left. If anyone can hear this, please help us. We have never hurt anyone. We only wanted to live in peace." The desperate message traveled through hyperspace, reaching communication stations across the galaxy. Most who heard it simply shook their heads in sadness. The Zelethi were too far away, and the Korthak were too dangerous. It was a tragedy, but not their problem. Light years away from the dying world, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the human patrol ship called New Boston. Jake was a big man with rough hands and kind eyes. He had joined the space service to explore, not to fight, but space had other plans. The bridge around him was cramped and functional, built for efficiency rather than comfort. Every surface was covered in controls and screens that never stopped blinking. The distress signal came through their speakers like a ghost crying in the night. The bridge crew, 12 men and women from Earth, went completely quiet. They had all heard alien languages before, but this one was different. Even though they couldn't understand every word, they could hear the fear and desperation. "Run that through the translator again," Jake ordered his communications officer. Lieutenant Emily Parker worked at her station with quick, precise movements. Emily had joined the space service after losing her brother in a mining accident. She was the best comm officer in the fleet because she understood that sometimes, words were the only thing standing between life and death. "Sir, the translation is getting clearer," Emily reported, her voice tight with emotion. "It's a planetary evacuation call. An entire species is about to be wiped out. The attackers are called the Korthak Dominion. The victims call themselves Zelethi." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had heard whispers about the Korthak in spaceport bars and trading stations. They were raiders who took everything and left nothing but empty worlds behind. Pirates with an entire fleet and no conscience. What about Galactic Council response? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. Emily's fingers danced over her controls, pulling up shipping lanes and fleet positions. Her face grew pale as the numbers came up on her screen. "The nearest Council fleet is 3 weeks away at maximum speed. According to the transmission, the Zelethi have 6 hours at most." The bridge went silent again. Everyone knew what this meant. By the time help arrived, there would be nothing left to save except empty cities and floating ash. Jake Morrison had been born on Earth, in a small town where people still helped their neighbors. His grandmother always said that good people don't walk away when someone needs help, no matter how dangerous it might be. She never mentioned anything about aliens, but Jake figured the same rule applied. The problem was bigger than just distance. Humanity wasn't part of the Galactic Council. Most alien species considered humans to be dangerous savages from a death world. Earth's gravity was 3 times stronger than most inhabited planets. Earth's weather could kill you in a dozen different ways. Earth's animals were nightmare creatures compared to the gentle beings found on other worlds. Because of this, humans were kept in isolation, trading only at the edges of civilized space. But Jake didn't care about politics right now. Someone was calling for help, and help was what they would get. "Emily, get me Admiral Williams on emergency frequency," Jake ordered. "Tell him we have a code black situation." "Sir, are you sure about this?" asked his second officer, Lieutenant Danny Foster. Danny was young and still believed that following rules would keep everyone safe. "We're not supposed to get involved in council territory without authorization." Jake looked at the young officer with understanding. "Danny, sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the wrong rules. Get me that connection." Within minutes, Admiral Tom Williams appeared on their main screen. Williams was old enough to remember when humans first reached the stars, back when they thought they would be welcomed with open arms. Instead, they found a galaxy that feared them. His weathered face showed a lifetime of difficult decisions. "Morrison, what's the situation?" Williams asked without wasting time on pleasantries. Jake quickly explained the distress call and the timeline. As he talked, he watched Williams' expression change from concern to determination. The Admiral had spent 40 years in space, and he had never walked away from people in need. "Council politics?" Williams asked. "They'll probably file a complaint," Jake admitted. "Maybe try to restrict our trading rights even more." Williams was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, Jake could see the busy bridge of the flagship Iron Wolf. Officers moved with purpose, preparing for whatever their admiral decided. "Morrison, prep your ship for combat operations," Williams finally said. "We're going hunting." The call went out across human space like wildfire. Within hours, ships began moving toward the assembly point at the edge of their territory. This wasn't just any military response, this was Battle Group Fenrir, humanity's most powerful war fleet. The name meant wolf in an ancient Earth language, and it was chosen for good reason. When humans went to war, they hunted in packs. Admiral Tom Williams stood in the command center of his flagship, the Iron Wolf, watching dozens of screens that showed ships arriving from all directions. Each vessel that joined the formation made his heart beat a little faster. These weren't the sleek, elegant ships that other species built. Human vessels looked like flying mountains of metal and armor, designed to take punishment and keep fighting. The 6 dreadnoughts were the backbone of the fleet. Each one was over 2 miles long and packed with enough firepower to level a small moon. Their hulls were 3 feet thick in some places, built to survive the crushing pressure of Earth's deep oceans and the violent storms that could tear apart weaker ships. The Iron Wolf led them all, bristling with weapon systems and communication arrays. Behind the dreadnoughts came 12 destroyers, smaller but faster ships designed for hit-and-run attacks. These vessels carried the most experienced crews in human space, men and women who had been fighting pirates and raiders for decades. They knew how to work together like fingers on a hand, each ship covering the others in perfect coordination. Mixed throughout the formation were the marine assault ships, ugly and practical vessels that looked more like flying bricks than spacecraft. But inside each one were 100 of humanity's finest warriors, soldiers trained on a world where everything tried to kill you from the moment you were born. They carried weapons that most aliens would consider primitive, guns that fired chunks of metal instead of energy beams, but these simple tools had proven their worth in countless battles. Williams walked between the control stations on his bridge, checking on his officers. These men and women had served with him for years, following him through battles against pirates, smugglers, and hostile alien raiders. They knew his methods and trusted his judgment, even when that judgment led them into impossible situations. "Status report," Williams called out to his tactical officer. Lieutenant Colonel Janet Rodriguez looked up from her screens. Janet had been born on Mars, where the gravity was lighter than Earth but the environment was just as deadly. She understood weapons and tactics better than anyone Williams had ever served with. "All ships report ready for combat operations, Admiral." Fuel topped off, weapons loaded, Marines loaded and angry. Williams allowed himself a small smile. Angry Marines are the best kind. What's our travel time to Kepler, 442b? 18 hours at maximum hyperspace speed, Rodriguez replied. But sir, that's going to put a lot of stress on the engines. The engines will hold, Williams said with confidence. Human engineers built everything to last, even under conditions that would destroy equipment made by other species. What they won't survive is arriving too late to matter. Across the fleet, similar conversations were taking place. On the destroyer Razor's Edge, Captain Lisa Chen gathered her crew for a final briefing. Lisa had grown up in the asteroid belt, where one mistake meant death and weakness was not tolerated. Her crew respected her because she had never lost a ship or abandoned a mission. People, we're about to jump into a fight that's none of our business, Lisa told her assembled officers. The aliens we're going to save don't even like us. The Council will probably try to punish us for getting involved. And the enemy outnumbers us by at least 2 to 1. Her crew listened in silence, their faces showing the kind of calm determination that came from years of dangerous service. But here's the thing, Lisa continued. Somewhere out there, people are dying. Children are crying for their parents. Families are being torn apart by bullies who think might makes right. And we're the only ones close enough to do anything about it. She looked each of her officers in the eye. I've never met a Zealoty, and I don't know if they'll thank us for this. But I know I'll be able to sleep at night knowing we tried. Anyone who wants to transfer off before we jump, speak now. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. These were humans, raised on a world that taught them to stand up to bullies and protect those who couldn't protect themselves. On the Marine assault ship Thunderbolt, General Mike Harris was having a different kind of conversation with his troops. Harris was a big man with scars covering his arms and face, souvenirs from a dozen battles across human space. His Marines called him Iron Mike, because nothing seemed to hurt him for long. Listen up, you beautiful killers, Harris addressed the 500 Marines packed into the ship's main assembly bay. These men and women wore powered armor that doubled their strength and speed, but their real weapons were their training and their refusal to quit when things got tough. We're going up against the Korthak Dominion, Harris continued. For those of you keeping score at home, these are the same alien scumbags who wiped out the colonies on Kepler, 186F last year. They don't take prisoners, they don't show mercy, and they think humans are just another primitive species to be crushed. A low growl went through the assembled Marines. They remembered Kepler, 186F. Everyone in human space remembered it. Well, today they're about to learn different, Harris said with a grin that showed too many teeth. Today they find out what happens when you mess with someone under our protection. Today they meet the children of Earth, and we're going to show them why our ancestors climbed to the top of the food chain. The Marines cheered, a sound like thunder rolling through the ship's corridors. They had trained for years for a chance like this, a chance to prove that humans belonged among the stars, that they were more than just violent savages from a death world. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Korthak General Vex received the first reports of human fleet movements from his intelligence network. The alien warlord was an impressive figure by any standard, 8 feet tall with 4 arms and natural armor plating that could stop most small weapons. His mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. Humans. Vex asked his intelligence officer. The Deathworlders are actually coming here. Yes, General, the smaller alien replied nervously. Our sources confirm a significant fleet movement toward Zealoty space. Estimated arrival in 18 hours. Vex's mandibles clicked faster. This was even better than he had hoped. The Korthak Dominion had been looking for an excuse to test their strength against these mysterious humans for years. Now the primitives were delivering themselves into his claws. How many ships? Vex demanded. Preliminary reports suggest 18 to 20 vessels, General. Much smaller than our fleet. Perfect, Vex hissed. We'll crush the Zealoty as planned, then add human skulls to our trophy room. Send word to the fleet, we have new prey heading our way. Back in human space, the Iron Wolf's engines roared to life with a sound like controlled thunder. One by one, the other ships in Battle Group Fenrir followed suit. Their hyperspace drives charged with barely contained energy, ready to tear holes in reality itself. Admiral Williams took one last look at his tactical display, then nodded to his navigation officer. All ships, engage hyperspace drives. It's time to show the galaxy what humans do when innocent people call for help. The fleet vanished in flashes of twisted light, leaving behind only the fading echoes of engines that sounded remarkably like the howl of wolves on the hunt. The Korthak fleet floated in space like a swarm of deadly insects, their black ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns around the dying world below. For 3 hours, they had been systematically destroying every city, every settlement, every sign of life on Kepler 442b. General Vex watched the bombardment from his command throne, his 4 arms casually operating different control systems as his ships turned a peaceful civilization into ash and rubble. The Zealothi had stopped screaming an hour ago. Their communication networks were down, their defense stations were smoking craters, and their population centers looked like the surface of a volcanic moon. It was almost too easy. General Vex had conquered 47 worlds in his career, and this one barely qualified as a warm-up exercise. His bridge crew worked with the calm efficiency of experienced killers. The Korthak Dominion had perfected the art of planetary destruction over centuries of conquest. They knew exactly how much firepower to use, how long each phase should take, and how to extract maximum terror from their victims before the final blow. "General," his sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting a hyperspace disturbance. Multiple contacts incoming." Vex barely glanced at the tactical display. Probably Council peacekeepers finally showing up. "How many ships?" "6 large contacts, General. Plus escort vessels. They're coming in fast and close." "Close?" Vex's mandibles clicked in mild interest. Most species dropped out of hyperspace at a safe distance and approached cautiously, following the accepted protocols of civilized warfare. "Define close." Before his sensor operator could answer, space itself seemed to tear open less than a mile from the Korthak flagship. Reality twisted and bent as massive shapes burst through the hyperspace portal like predators emerging from tall grass. 6 human dreadnoughts materialized in the heart of the Korthak formation, their hulls still glowing with hyperspace energy. The Iron Wolf led the charge, followed by the Montana, the Texas, the Carolina, the Alaska, and the Ontario. Each ship was a flying fortress bristling with weapon systems, their armor scarred from decades of battles across human space. "Impossible!" General Vex shrieked, his calm composure shattered. Every alarm on his ship began blaring at once as proximity warnings flooded his screens. No civilized species attempted such a reckless hyperspace insertion. The risk of materializing inside another ship's hull was enormous. The chance of miscalculation was deadly. But humans had never been civilized by galactic standards. Admiral Williams stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Around him, his officers worked with practiced efficiency despite having just performed one of the most dangerous maneuvers in space warfare. The navigation computers were still calculating their exact position when Williams gave his first order. "All ships, immediate attack pattern. Target their heavy cruisers first." The Iron Wolf opened fire before the Korthak could react. Instead of the elegant energy beams favored by most spacefaring species, the human dreadnought launched chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic rails. These kinetic projectiles were primitive by galactic standards, just hunks of iron and tungsten, but they carried the force of controlled meteorites. The Korthak energy shields had been designed to deflect plasma beams and particle weapons. They were useless against simple mass traveling at significant fractions of light speed. The first volley from the Iron Wolf punched through a Korthak battleship's shields like they were made of paper, tearing massive holes in its hull and sending debris spinning into space. "What kind of weapons are those?" Vex demanded as his ship shuddered under return fire. "They appear to be kinetic projectiles, General," his weapons officer replied, his voice shaking. Primitive ballistic weapons. But the velocities are enormous. Captain Lisa Chen commanded the destroyer Razor's Edge from her position on the ship's cramped bridge. Unlike the spacious, elegant command centers favored by other species, human bridges were built for efficiency and survival. Every surface was armored, every system had backups, and every officer was trained to keep fighting even if half the ship was blown away. All vessels, execute pattern Delta 7, Lisa broadcast to the fleet. She had grown up watching wolves hunt in the nature preserves of Europa, and she understood pack tactics better than any alien commander. Let's show these bugs how Earth's apex predators hunt. The human ships moved with a coordination that defied explanation. While the 6 dreadnoughts engaged the largest Korthak vessels, the 12 destroyers split into 3 groups of 4. Each group moved like a single organism, one ship drawing enemy fire while the others flanked and struck from unexpected angles. The Korthak tried to respond with their standard battle formations, but human tactics made no sense by their military doctrine. Human ships deliberately took damage to gain tactical advantage. They used their own vessels as shields to protect others. They treated acceptable losses as just another tool in their arsenal. Captain Tony Rodriguez commanded the destroyer Denver when 3 Korthak cruisers concentrated their fire on his position. His ship's armor began to glow red under the sustained bombardment, and his damage control teams reported critical systems failing throughout the vessel. By any civilized standard of warfare, Rodriguez should have withdrawn to a safe distance and called for support. Instead, he did something that no Korthak commander could have predicted. All hands, brace for ramming speed, Rodriguez announced over the ship's communication system. His crew didn't question the order. They had served under Rodriguez for 6 years, and they trusted his judgment completely. The Denver's engines roared to full power, pushing the damaged destroyer directly toward the nearest Korthak cruiser. The alien ship tried to evade, but human vessels were built to survive in Earth's violent gravity well. They were tough, fast, and maneuverable in ways that ships from lighter worlds could never match. Rodriguez's destroyer slammed into the Korthak cruiser at full speed, both ships disappearing in a brilliant explosion that lit up the space around Kepler 442b. The shockwave from the impact damaged 2 other alien vessels and sent debris cascading across the battlefield. On the Korthak flagship, General Vex stared at his tactical display in horror. He had lost 4 ships in the first 10 minutes of combat, and the human fleet showed no signs of slowing down. These weren't the cautious, methodical attacks he was used to facing. This was something primal and terrifying. "General," his communications officer called out, "the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it on speakers," Vex ordered. Admiral Williams' voice filled the Korthak bridge, speaking in heavily accented Galactic Standard. "Attention Korthak vessels. This is Admiral Tom Williams of the Terran Defense Force. You are ordered to cease fire on the civilian population immediately and withdraw from this system." General Vex's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter if he wasn't so shaken. "Tell the human that he is outnumbered 2 to 1. Tell him that the Korthak Dominion does not negotiate with primitive species." The response came back within seconds. "General Vex, this is Admiral Williams. We're not here to negotiate. We're here to stop you. And we don't care about the odds." As if to emphasize the point, the human fleet launched another coordinated attack. 3 destroyers working in perfect coordination crippled a Korthak heavy cruiser, while the dreadnoughts continued their methodical destruction of the alien battle line. General Vex realized with growing horror that he was facing an enemy unlike any he had encountered in his long career. These humans fought like wild animals, intelligent wild animals with advanced technology and absolutely no regard for their own safety. The Korthak Dominion had built its reputation on terrorizing civilized species who valued their lives and fought according to established rules. But humans didn't follow the rules. They treated war like a blood sport, and they were very, very good at it. For the first time in 47 conquests, General Vex began to wonder if he had picked the wrong target. Admiral Williams stood in the command center of the Iron Wolf, his weathered hands gripping the tactical display as he studied the battlefield. The space around Kepler 442b had become a chaotic maze of burning ships, debris fields, and energy weapon fire. His fleet had drawn first blood, but the numbers were still against them. 24 Korthak vessels remained operational, while he had 18 ships still in fighting condition. The bridge around him hummed with controlled activity. Officers called out damage reports, weapon status updates, and tactical observations. These men and women had served together for years, and they moved like parts of a well-oiled machine. But Williams knew that traditional space combat wouldn't win this fight. The Korthak had superior numbers and their weapons were just as deadly as human guns. Time for something different. Captain Davis, Williams called out to the commander of the destroyer Wolverine. I need you to take damage. On the screen, Captain Steve Davis looked back at him with the kind of calm expression that came from years of dangerous service. Davis had been born in the mining colonies of Titan, where mechanical failures killed more people than enemy action. He understood that sometimes the mission required personal sacrifice. How much damage, sir? Davis asked without hesitation. Enough to look convincing, Williams replied. I want the Korthak to think you're crippled and helpless. Then, when they move in for the kill, punch a hole right through their battle line. Davis nodded slowly, understanding immediately what his admiral was asking. It was a classic human tactic, use apparent weakness to draw the enemy into a trap. Other species would consider it insane to deliberately damage your own ship, but humans have been using deception in warfare since they learned to sharpen sticks. Roger that, Admiral, Davis said. Wolverine going hunting. The destroyer turned toward the thickest concentration of Korthak ships, her engines blazing at maximum power. To the alien commanders, it looked like a desperate attack by a damaged vessel. 3 Korthak cruisers immediately moved to intercept, their energy weapons charging for what they thought would be an easy kill. The Wolverine charged straight into their concentrated fire, her armor plating beginning to glow white-hot under the sustained bombardment. Pieces of hull plating flew off into space as the destroyer took hit after hit. Her shields flickered and died, her weapon systems went offline one by one, and her engines began to sputter and smoke. But Steve Davis had grown up on Titan, where the difference between life and death often came down to how long you could keep broken equipment running. He nursed his crippled ship forward, using every trick he had learned in 20 years of space service. When his main engines failed, he switched to maneuvering thrusters. When his primary weapon systems died, he activated backup guns that most captains forgot they had. The Korthak cruisers moved closer, confident that they were about to finish off a helpless enemy. That's when Davis revealed his trap. All Marines, launch immediately, he shouted over the ship's communication system. All fighters, go go go. The Wolverine's hull suddenly erupted with dozens of small craft. Boarding pods shot out like bullets from hidden launchers, while fighter aircraft poured from concealed bay doors. In seconds, the supposedly crippled destroyer had become a launching platform for the most dangerous assault troops in human space. Sergeant Amy Collins felt her boarding pod slam into the hull of a Korthak battleship with bone-jarring force. The magnetic clamps engaged automatically, holding the small craft in place while cutting lasers burned through alien armor plating. Around her, 9 other Marines checked their weapons and prepared for what every human soldier called the fun part. Amy had been born in the Australian outback back on Earth, where everything from the spiders to the plants could kill you if you weren't careful. She had joined the Marines because space combat reminded her of home, dangerous, unpredictable, and absolutely no room for mistakes. The cutting lasers finished their work, and the boarding pod's assault door blew inward. Amy led her squad through the smoking hole and into the Korthak ship's corridor system. The aliens had never faced humans in close combat, and they were about to learn why Earth had produced the galaxy's most feared ground fighters. The first Korthak warrior Amy encountered was 8 feet tall with natural armor plating and 4 arms, each carrying a different weapon. In any fair fight, the alien would have been nearly unstoppable. But humans didn't believe in fair fights. Amy's kinetic rifle fired depleted uranium rounds at hypersonic velocity. The simple chunks of metal punched through the alien's armor like it was made of cardboard, dropping the massive warrior in a single shot. Behind her, 9 other Marines poured into the corridor, their weapons chattering with controlled fury. "Clear the bridge!" Amy shouted as her squad advanced through the ship's twisting passageways. The Korthak had designed their vessels with elegant, sweeping corridors that looked impressive but provided no defensive advantage. Human ships were built like mazes specifically to slow down boarding parties, but these aliens had never considered the possibility of being boarded themselves. More Korthak warriors appeared, firing energy weapons that could melt through most armor in the galaxy. But human Marines wore powered exoskeletons built to survive Earth's crushing gravity and violent weather. The alien energy beams scorched their armor but didn't slow them down. What the Korthak couldn't understand was how fast the humans moved. These bipeds had evolved under gravity 3 times stronger than most inhabited worlds, with reflexes sharpened by a planet that actively tried to kill everything living on it. They moved like liquid lightning, flowing around obstacles and striking from unexpected angles. Corporal Pete Johnson had grown up in the Rocky Mountains, where he learned to hunt elk through terrain that would challenge a mountain goat. Now he used those same skills to stalk through alien corridors, his rifle picking off Korthak warriors before they could react to his presence. "Tango down, Corridor 7, Pete reported over the squad communication system. "These bugs move like they're underwater." The aliens were discovering something that pirates and raiders had learned the hard way over the years: humans in close combat were absolutely terrifying. They didn't follow the civilized rules of engagement. They used every dirty trick, every unfair advantage, every psychological weapon they could think of. Sergeant Amy Collins reached the bridge of the Korthak battleship just as the ship's captain was calling for reinforcements. The alien commander was a massive specimen even by Korthak standards, his armor decorated with the skulls of conquered enemies. He held a weapon in each of his 4 hands and roared a challenge in his native language. Amy shot him twice in the center of mass and kept moving. She didn't have time for dramatic confrontations or extended combat. Her job was to take the ship, not to prove how tough she was. "Bridge secured," she reported to Captain Davis over the communication link. "What do you want us to do with the prisoner?" "What prisoner?" Davis asked. Amy looked around the bridge, which was now occupied entirely by human Marines standing over alien corpses. "Never mind, sir. No prisoners." Throughout the Korthak fleet, similar scenes were playing out as human Marines carved through alien ships with ruthless efficiency. The boarding action had caught the enemy completely off guard. They had expected to fight a traditional space battle using energy weapons and long-range missiles. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that treated hand-to-hand combat as just another tactical option. On his flagship, General Vex watched in growing horror as ship after ship in his fleet went silent. The humans had somehow managed to board 8 of his vessels simultaneously, and their assault troops were tearing through his crews like they were made of paper. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "How are primitive Deathworlders defeating our warriors in close combat?" The answer came from a wounded Korthak soldier who had managed to escape from one of the boarded ships. "General, these humans, they move too fast. They hit too hard. They show no fear of death. Our energy weapons barely slow them down, and their kinetic weapons punch through our armor like it doesn't exist." General Vex felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest: genuine fear. He was facing an enemy that fought by rules he didn't understand, using tactics that defied every military principle he had ever learned. And the worst part was that the humans were winning. The space battle around Kepler 442b had become a nightmare for General Vex. Half his fleet was either destroyed or captured by human boarding parties, and the rest of his ships were scattered across the system trying to escape the relentless human attack. His perfectly organized formation had collapsed into chaos, with Korthak vessels fleeing in every direction while human ships hunted them down like wolves chasing rabbits. General Vex stood on his flagship's bridge, watching his military career crumble on the tactical displays. 47 worlds he had conquered for the Dominion. 47 perfect victories that had built his reputation as an unstoppable warlord. Now a handful of primitive Deathworlders were destroying everything he had worked for. His mandibles clicked in frustration and growing panic. The Korthak Dominion did not tolerate failure, especially from generals who had promised easy victories. If he returned home defeated by humans, his own superiors would execute him for incompetence. But if he could at least destroy the human command ship, he might salvage something from this disaster. All remaining vessels, form up on my position, Vex ordered his scattered fleet. We're going to ram the human flagship. His bridge officers looked at each other with obvious concern. Ramming attacks were considered desperate and dishonorable by Korthak military doctrine, the last resort of commanders who had already lost control of the battle. But none of them dared question their general's orders. Sir, his navigation officer said carefully, ramming tactics are extremely dangerous. We could lose the flagship. We're already losing everything. Vex roared, his 4 arms gesturing wildly at the tactical display. At least this way we take some of them with us. The Korthak flagship was a massive vessel, over 3 miles long and armed with enough firepower to devastate an entire planet. When it began accelerating toward the Iron Wolf, its engines glowing white-hot with maximum power, every ship in the system took notice. On the human command vessel, Admiral Williams watched the alien dreadnought approaching on an obvious collision course. His tactical officers immediately began calculating evasive maneuvers and defensive options, but Williams held up a hand to stop them. Sir, his weapons officer said urgently, that ship is going to ram us. We need to move. Williams studied the tactical display with the calm expression of a man who had been fighting in space for 40 years. He had seen ramming attacks before, usually attempted by desperate pirates or raiders who were about to be captured. The key to surviving such attacks was not to run away, but to use the enemy's desperation against them. Negative, Williams said calmly. We're going to let them come to us. His bridge crew looked at him like he had lost his mind, but none of them questioned the order. They had served under Williams long enough to trust his judgment, even when that judgment seemed suicidal. All hands, brace for impact, Williams announced over the ship's communication system. His voice was as steady as if he were announcing dinner time. General Harris, you're cleared for final assault. In the marine bay of the Iron Wolf, General Mike Harris received the message with a grin that would have terrified most alien species. Harris had been waiting for this moment since the battle began. His Marines were the finest close combat fighters in human space, trained to fight in conditions that would kill ordinary soldiers. But they needed to get close to the enemy to be effective, and space battles usually kept opposing forces far apart. All right, you beautiful killers, Harris addressed his assembled troops over the communication system. The Admiral is giving us a direct ride to the enemy flagship. When we hit, I want every Marine through those breach points and into their ship. Show these alien scumbags what happens when they threaten innocent people. The Iron Wolf's hull had been reinforced for exactly this kind of situation. Human engineers had learned long ago that sometimes the best way to win a fight was to survive being hit and then hit back twice as hard. The ship's armor was designed to absorb tremendous impacts while protecting the crew inside. The 2 flagships collided with a sound like thunder echoing through the vacuum of space. The Korthak vessel's pointed bow drove deep into the Iron Wolf's armored hull, both ships buckling and twisting from the tremendous forces involved. Debris flew in all directions as armor plating tore apart and internal systems exploded. But Admiral Williams had planned for this moment. The instant the ships made contact, shaped charges blew holes in the Iron Wolf's hull exactly where the enemy ship had penetrated. Instead of trying to keep the alien vessel out, the humans opened their ship to let the Marines flood into enemy territory. General Harris led the assault personally, his powered armor carrying him through the smoking breach point and into the Korthak flagship's corridors. Behind him came 500 of humanity's finest warriors, each one trained to fight in the kind of close-quarters chaos where human advantages were most pronounced. The aliens found themselves facing humans in their natural element. These weren't the elegant, long-range battles that civilized species preferred. This was brutal, face-to-face combat where reflexes, training, and sheer determination mattered more than advanced technology. Sergeant Bobby Thompson had grown up in the slums of New Detroit, where you learned to fight dirty or you didn't survive childhood. Now he used those same street fighting skills to clear Korthak corridors, his kinetic rifle chattering as he advanced through the alien ship. Tango down, portside corridor, Bobby reported as another Korthak warrior fell to his sustained fire. These bugs really don't know how to handle close combat. The aliens were discovering that their energy weapons, so effective in space battles, were nearly useless in the tight confines of ship corridors. The beams took time to charge and required precise aiming, while human kinetic weapons could be fired rapidly in any direction. More importantly, humans moved with a speed and aggression that the Korthak couldn't match. Lieutenant Rachel Adams had been raised on a cattle ranch in Montana, where she learned to think fast and act faster when dealing with dangerous animals. Those same skills served her well as she led her squad through the alien ship's command section, taking out enemy defenders with brutal efficiency. Bridge section secured, Rachel reported to General Harris. No casualties on our side. General Harris himself reached the Korthak command center just as General Vex was preparing to activate his ship's self-destruct system. The alien warlord was an impressive figure, standing nearly 9 feet tall in full battle armor, but Harris had faced bigger opponents during his years of service. Going somewhere? Harris asked casually, his rifle pointed directly at the alien general's center of mass. General Vex looked around his bridge, now filled with human marines standing over the bodies of his officers. In 30 minutes, these primitive Deathworlders had torn through his flagship like it was made of paper. Everything he had believed about human military capabilities had been completely wrong. You cannot defeat the Korthak Dominion, Vex said, though his voice lacked conviction. We are the greatest military force in the galaxy. Yeah, about that, Harris replied, reaching for restraint cables. You picked the wrong species to mess with. Within minutes, General Vex was in human custody and the surviving Korthak fleet was fleeing the system at maximum speed. The aliens had learned a lesson that pirates and raiders throughout human space already knew: when humans went to war, they didn't follow the civilized rules of engagement. Down on the surface of Kepler 442b, the Zealothi people emerged from their underground shelters to see human ships descending through the smoke-filled atmosphere. These graceful aliens, with their 6 arms and crystal cities, had never seen humans before. They watched in amazement as the vessels landed and disgorged teams of medical personnel and engineers. Captain Jennifer Stone was the first human to set foot on Zealothi soil, leading a medical team that immediately began setting up aid stations for the wounded. Jennifer had joined the space service after completing medical school, believing that healing was more important than fighting. But she understood that sometimes you had to fight to protect those who needed healing. Don't be afraid, she told a group of Zealothi children in their own language, which she had been studying during the 18-hour journey to their world. Her pronunciation was terrible, but the meaning was clear. You're safe now. Humans don't abandon people in need. The Zealothi adults looked at each other in amazement. These fearsome Deathworlders, who had just destroyed an entire Korthak fleet, were now treating their wounded and helping to rebuild their cities. It was unlike anything they had expected from the species the galaxy called dangerous savages. News of the battle traveled across the galaxy at the speed of light, carried by communication networks that connected thousands of worlds. The story grew with each telling, how a small human fleet had defeated a superior Korthak force through tactics that defied all military logic. On civilized worlds throughout the galaxy, alien leaders gathered in emergency sessions to discuss what this meant for the balance of power. The humans were no longer just dangerous Deathworlders confined to the edge of known space. They were a military force capable of challenging established powers. 3 days after the battle, the Galactic Council received humanity's first official diplomatic message. It was short, direct, and written in the kind of simple language that left no room for misinterpretation. To the leaders of all civilized species, the Terran Defense Force stands ready to assist any people threatened by those who prey upon the innocent. We seek peaceful relations with all species, but we will not stand idle while bullies destroy those who cannot defend themselves. We bring peace through superior firepower. The message was signed by Admiral Tom Williams on behalf of the Terran government, and it marked the beginning of a new era in galactic politics. Humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage, and everyone would have to adjust to the reality that the Deathworlders from Earth were no longer content to stay on the sidelines. The age of human involvement in galactic affairs had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.